All right, let's just jump right into this. You read it everywhere, right? This trillion-dollar AI revolution is here. But here's a thought. What if the entire foundation of that revolution is built on a massive, fatal flaw? And what if a totally new approach could make that huge investment, well, basically worthless, almost overnight?
To really get what's going on, you've got to hear this analogy. It's perfect. Picture a railway. And it mostly gets you where you want to go. But every now and then, completely out of the blue, it decides to creatively reinterpret your destination. Now, would you bet trillions of dollars on a system like that? Of course not. But believe it or not, that's exactly what's happening with AI right now.
And the sheer scale of this bet, it's just mind-boggling. First, you have a reported $300 billion cloud deal between OpenAI and Oracle. But wait, there's more. On top of that, you've got another $100 billion from NVIDIA, just for their infrastructure. I mean, these are numbers that are kind of hard to even wrap your head around. And get this, by 2030, the whole industry is looking at needing to need $2 trillion in revenue. And that's not profit. That's just to keep the lights on, to fund all the computing power needed. So yeah, we're talking about a massive, industry-wide bet on what is, at its core, a fundamentally unreliable system. All right, so this leads us to the big question, right? What exactly is this trillion-dollar bet?
See, this isn't like past investment crazes. Think about the old railroad booms. Back then, everybody knew trains worked. The question was just how many to build. But this AI bubble, it's totally different. It's not just about building too much of something we know works. It's a pure gamble on whether the technology itself is even viable for the important, high-stakes stuff we need it for.
And if you look closely, you can see all the classic signs of a bubble. You've got these tech giants just throwing insane amounts of money at data centers. Not because there's a clear roadmap to making that money back, but because of good old-fashioned FOMO, the fear of missing out. Even the Financial Times has pointed out that the big players are hedging their bets. Why? Because the risks of that wonky, unpredictable railway are a lot clearer than any of the supposed benefits. Okay, so the money side of things looks, well, pretty shaky. But what's the technical reason for all this? What's the glitch in the system? Well, this is where we get to the absolute heart of the matter, a core flaw we're going to call the approximation problem. And there it is, the villain of our story, hiding right there in plain sight. This little formula, this is the engine behind pretty much all of today's AI. But look closer. See that squiggly equals sign? That's the whole problem right there. It doesn't mean equals, it means is approximately equal to. That means the AI's output is never the real thing. It's always just a statistical best guess. And that one little symbol, that's where all the hallucinations, all the unreliability comes from. So to do their thing, these AIs have to take our rich, nuanced human language and just crush it down into these giant lists of numbers. This creates what one source perfectly calls a devastating disconnect. All the real meaning, the context, it just gets obliterated in the process. And that's why these models hallucinate. It's why they burn through unbelievable amounts of energy calculating complete nonsense. Things like, and yeah, this is a real quote, the sandwichness of a Tuesday. They're not thinking. They're just matching patterns in a sea of numbers. So, okay, if the old way is so fundamentally broken, what's the fix? Well, let's look at the alternative. Instead of these numerical tokens, which are really just chopped up bits of words, the semiotic web uses something called tokums. Think of them as complete, crystal-clear units of meaning. And instead of those murky numerical embeddings, it uses what it calls semantic DNA. It's a way to actually trace where information comes from and what its context is. You're basically moving from simple pattern matching to real, honest-to-goodness reasoning. It's like going from a mysterious, opaque black box to a system that's completely transparent and traceable. And this leads us straight to the solution. It's a completely different way of thinking about AI. One that isn't built on guesswork and approximation, but on a real, solid web of meaning.
Right now, the industry's only answer to this whole approximation mess is just throw more money at it, build bigger data centers, get faster chips. But that's like, as the quote says, just building faster shovels to dig yourself deeper into the same hole. The returns get smaller and smaller because you're not actually fixing the core problem.
So what is the real fix then? It's all about adding one crucial missing piece to the puzzle. See, today's AI is actually pretty good with semantics, the dictionary definition of a word, and syntactics, which is just grammar.
But the thing it's completely missing is pragmatism. And pragmatism is just a fancy word for understanding context, real-world consequences. Here's a perfect example. Current AI knows a stop sign is a red octagon with the letters STOP. That's semantics. But it doesn't understand that when you, a human in a car, see one, it means you have to physically hit the brakes. That's pragmatism. And that is the huge piece of the puzzle that's missing today.
So, the big question is, how does this semiotic web actually build that kind of contextual, pragmatic understanding? Well, it all comes down to its really unique three-layer architecture.
Okay, layer one. It starts with what's called the Comprehension Cloud, or CCC for short. The easiest way to think about this is like the foundation for everything. It's the universal public library of all of humanity's shared knowledge. This is the global context. Next up, layer two. This is the Shared Semantic System, the SSS. Now, this layer is private. It's the specific knowledge base for a particular group. Think of a company's internal files or a research lab's private data. This gives you that all-important organizational context. And finally, layer three. And this one is arguably the most important. It's the Private Perspective Portal, the PPP. And this is basically your own personal digital twin. It's everything that makes you, your emails, your projects, your notes, even your values. This is the layer that makes the AI's understanding truly relevant to you. Okay, now this is where the magic happens. This is where it all clicks, because real meaning, what the experts call semiosis, it doesn't just live in one of these layers. It actually emerges from the way all three of them work together. You've got information flowing from the huge global context of the CCC and the more specific organizational context of the SSS, but here's the key. It all gets filtered through the unique lens of your personal PPP. And what comes out the other side isn't just a statistical guess. It is a genuine, context-aware understanding that is specifically tailored to you. All right, so we have a new way of doing things, an architecture that finally moves us away from approximation and towards true meaning. So let's bring this all the way back to that trillion-dollar problem we started with. It's time to talk about what happens when this bubble finally bursts. And this really is the question that everyone in the tech world should be losing sleep over. What happens to that trillion-dollar bet when the entire game changes? What happens to all that money, all that hardware, all that investment that was poured into building that shaky, unreliable railway when someone else comes along and invents a perfectly reliable, high-speed maglev train? Well, here's the hard, unavoidable truth. All those trillions being spent on an architecture that can only ever guess at meaning, that money doesn't just lose value, it becomes a sunk cost. It's gone. Because a system that's built on true meaning doesn't just compete with the old way, it makes it completely obsolete. The game doesn't just change, it's a whole new game. So, if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The future of AI isn't about building bigger models or getting faster chips. It's not about building faster shovels to keep digging in the wrong place. It's about finally admitting that the current approach has a hard limit and then having the courage to change the fundamental data architecture itself. So, the real question isn't if this AI bubble is going to burst. The real question is, what are we going to build in its place?